Many people complain that it is the lower levels in the services which are the most reluctant to change. They are committed to their legacy platform concepts. Change requires people at the top to impose innovations on the unwilling services. There's good reason to believe this. The budget starts from the bottom and moves its way up. Those at the top only have the power to move money on the margins. This bottom-up process was a reaction to the top-down budget implemented by Robert McNamara and his whiz kids in the 1960s. Their top-down approach proved simply unworkable, grinding innovation down. When Melvin Laird took the helm in the Pentagon, he compromised by allowing the services to formulate their own programs. This got things moving again, but it didn't really solve the real problem. McNamara's real change was to introduce the twin concepts of program budgeting and systems analysis. This was called the Planning, Programming, Budgeting System, and it remains virtually unchanged and identical nearly 70 years later. The idea was to classify the budget by output, like the Minuteman missiles or the F-111 aircraft, further detailed 5 years into the future, creating significant lock-in effects. And these long-range plans take many years to devise and approve. Military programs start from a requirements process that can take anywhere from 2 to 10 years. This is performed by staff officers who come and go from their positions over that time. Then, they have to shop around the document to dozens of offices, any one of which can veto or more likely withhold approval until they get what they want. This is called gold plating. A classic example is the V-22 Osprey, which came from Bell's XV-15 demonstrator starting in the early 1980s. Gold plating from 4 service requirements made the engineering task for a brand new tiltrotor design nearly impossible. The desired empty weight was tripled, speed was nearly doubled, add capacity for 18 troops, 10 times the payload, 3 times the altitude, and nearly 5 times the range. And that's not it. Add guns, missiles, chaff, add the heaviest armor ever put on a helicopter, operate from naval vessels, which is incredibly complex, add external hardpoints, add pressurization for chemical, nuclear, and biological attacks, and there's much more. When lead engineer Ken Wernicke heard about this, he went to his boss and said, "I'm not going to do it. It will be the downfall of the tiltrotor." It took 3 rounds of development and nearly 25 years for the V-22 to become operational. What does this have to do with the budget process? All this effort is to make sure that the development, production, and sustainment are adequately budgeted for before the program even starts, and never are there iterations in learning planned for. The Pentagon's program budget is a waterfall process, planning for every step first as though the future can be predicted and controlled. This is very much an industrial era model. By contrast, agile processes create quick feedback cycles throughout development and production. This is an information era model that has led to tremendous innovation in the commercial industry. Indeed, defense used to be agile before the program budget forced waterfall processes on it. Budgets used to be classified by organization, such as the Army Technical Services, including Ordnance and Engineering, and the Navy's Bureau System, including Construction and Repair and Aeronautics. This allowed top managers the ability to experiment and scale programs quickly, who had full authority and responsibility to get it done. And so we return to the original question. The problem isn't that the budget comes from the bottom up, or the top down. Instead, McNamara's programming process puts the program ahead of the organizations that execute it. At the lower levels, people's careers are tied to specific weapons programs which they had no say in devising. Their tour of duty is usually 2 and sometimes up to 5 years. but the average age of a major weapons program is over 14 years old. Changes to the bureaucracy's plan makes the lower levels look like a troublemaker or an oaf. Their career prospects and organizational power is tied directly to the program plan that they had no say in. In other words, they are locked into a financial prison. If they were to support innovation, then their money would go to a different organization. As budget scholar Aaron Wildavsky noted, you cannot abandon a program without simultaneously abandoning the organizations which get their money from it. And so, our recommendation for an organizational budget puts people first. The lower levels want to innovate, but feel constrained by the program budget. An organizational budget would allow them to pivot and put innovation first, which is the real heart's desire. Plus, they have by far the best information, not senior leaders at the top, largely disconnected from the technology and military realities. Please join us in making budget reform a reality.